Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bedford Township Planning Commission. It is July 10, 2024. It's 7 o'clock p.m. If we could stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Grant, can you take the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Weens? Mr. Steiner? Mr. Lake?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here?
Mr. Helm?
Here.
Mr. Andrews is here, and Mr. Trombley is absent.
Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. Somebody like to make a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make motion. Yes. There you go. Motion to approve the agenda. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Steiner supports. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 5, approval of the minutes from May 22, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 22nd, 2024.
Second. Okay, Mr. Andrews seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the minutes from last meeting are accepted. All right, moving on to item 6, public comment. Any comments limited to 3 minutes?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. Hadn't intended on speaking, but I came for another reason to speak at a later time here. But I'm kind of disappointed because I got here, saw what was on the agenda, and there's nothing over here for the public to look at. So I would love to see, because I'm opposed to that maintenance building being put onto this site. I really believe that there's a lot of issues that are going to come because of it. And there wasn't really a huge study to find a better placement for it. And I do believe it's going to push the fire tower to having to be moved. So, and I believe it'll be a problem for the neighbors. But I would have loved to have taken a look at the site plan, but I'll trust that you guys are going to do your job and do it well. And I'll get to say something at the township meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 7, new business. Item A, request for the final site plan approval for Bedford Township for an additional maintenance building located on parcel number 5802-027-036-05, otherwise known as 8100 Jackman Road, Temperance, Michigan 48182. Ms. Rector?
Yes, again, the applicant is Bedford Township, 8100 Jackman. Applicant representative is Jim Jacobs from Jim Jacobs Architects, 25 Washington Street, Monroe, Michigan. site address is going to, because it has its own physical address, is going to be 8106 Jackman. It is R2A single-family residential, and it's the current use is the Bedford Township Government Center, which includes the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, Bedford Township Fire Department Training Facility, and an accessory building. Proposed use is an additional government use building for the Bedford Township maintenance. It's approximately 9.1 acres. The subject site consists of approximately 9.1 acres, which is the location of the Bedford Township Government Center building, to include the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, Bedford Township Fire Department Training Facility, and an accessory use on site. The submitted site plan is for an additional 12,100 square foot structure. The proposed structure is to house conditional record storage on 2 levels, meeting and break room, a maintenance office, restrooms, entrance lobby, open mezzanine for mechanical equipment, and shop storage. There is a proposed 7-bay maintenance garage to service and store equipment and vehicles. As shown on the submitted site plan, the proposed structure provides a setback of 58 feet to the north property line, which is currently zoned multifamily residential and single-family residential. Existing landscaping will remain, and a proposed 6-foot-tall PVC privacy fence is proposed to the residential to the north. And that is only to the single-family residential. It's not required by the multifamily. Additional lighting is proposed on the structure. It shall be directed downward to prevent off-site light pollution, and a photometric plan has been included which meets the intent of the ordinance. The proposed site improvements consist of a rough and final grading and excavation activities, including fill and spoils removals for building pad and foundation activities, concrete and asphalt parking lots, driveways and sidewalks, building mounted site lighting, lawn restoration, fencing and new sanitary tap and main extension sanitary storage, and pump tanks and controls, grease and oil separator tanks, water main extension, and electrical service improvements to serve the new facility. On May 7, 2024, the Bedford Township Board granted a variation from the Development Design Standards Ordinance for the use of gravel on site as highlighted in yellow. I'm going to go to the site plan page. That area is proposed only. The remainder of the site development will be hard surface. The Manikin Smith Group reviewed the site plan with comments and conditions on July 1st, 2024 via an email. We have since got a review letter, and I believe the Jim Jacobs Architects is working on those reviews, comments back to Manikin Smith. The Bedford Township Fire Department reviewed and approved the site plan with comments on July 3rd, 2024. They will also review it during construction drawings. The Monroe County Drain Commission and the Monroe County Drain Commission regards to soil erosion and sedimentation control reviewed the site plan with comments and conditions on July 1st, 2024 via email. And there is no work being done on Jackman Road, therefore there is no review requirement from the Monroe County Road Commission. Should site plan approval be granted, a motion should include that the approval be contingent upon addressing all comments and conditions of the Bedford Township Fire Department, Manikin Smith correspondence via email, Monroe County Drain Commission, and Monroe County Drain Commission in regards to soil erosion and sedimentation control correspondence via email. We did include the review approval from the Township Board on the maintenance building for the Development Design Standards. Mark Matthey, they have no objection to the project being placed on the Planning Commission's agenda for the month. The Bedford Township Fire Department, from Mr. Doug Link and Jenna Morris, no issues with the project being submitted for review and approval. Proposed layout of the parcel, and then we have the site plan.
Okay. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Good evening, Chair and board members. My name is Jim Jacobs with Jacobs Architects, located at 25 Washington Street in Monroe. Here this evening to represent the township in their interest in development as has been outlined for you.
Before we proceed, I just want to remind you, we're one board member short tonight, and it's up to you whether you want to proceed or postpone until we have a full board, but you'll need 4 affirmative votes for this to pass.
Okay. Proceed.
I believe you can make that decision as representative.
Yeah, we'll proceed.
Okay. And you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just clarify our status with the comment letters. We received Manikin Smith's letter yesterday. Chris from my office, the project manager for this project, has reviewed that. Had some discussions with Mark on some questions we had with it this afternoon, and with that, we have no issues with compliance on any of his comments or the drain commissioner's comments or the other fire marshals either. So those are actually already addressed, ready for submittal. We were waiting for the Manikin Smith comments to ensure that we got everything before we did our final submittal. So with today's discussions, we're ready to submit the revisions to Ms. Rector's office to be double checked and reviewed as compliant with those comments. Just a couple of things to point out, I guess, with the site. There's going to be the placement of the building more or less takes up the grass area up to the edge of the existing asphalt. It encroaches a couple of feet into that asphalt with the revisions of the drive around the end of the building, but it will still maintain 66 feet clear space on the end of the structure for the fire department, for the training structure there. So that pad is not being encroached on outside of that landscape area on the end of the building to get the grading to work out properly. The storage bins, as shown on the plan, are outside of that asphalt area, so we're putting another strip of asphalt where the storage of material would be on unused surface as it sits today. The screening will run behind the existing garage all the way to those storage bins to completely screen the single-family residential uses from all of the township activities at the rear of the site. In that area too, just to point out, under today's conditions, under separate control, basically the property owner's control, that section is also heavily wooded on their side of the fence too. So between those two, there should be pretty decent screening, much better than what there is today for the activities that occur with pickup and fire training and those kind of things. So hopefully that will be an enhancement for those neighbors. Outside of that, I think things were explained pretty well. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Jacobs? Mr. Lake?
Just some questions. I noticed when I was reading this, there was it looks like a variance was granted for the gravel aspect, that I think shaded in yellow here in the picture. What was the original ordinance requirements, and why was it switched to gravel?
The requirements of the ordinance from the development design standards are hard surface, asphalt, or concrete. And the applicant, Mr. Jacobs, sat down, I believe, with the elected officials, and they discussed that area being of gravel. There's going to be no parking. It's really just for, I believe, I'll let Mr. Jacobs speak on it, but the process is they have to request to the township board, which was the variation of the development design standards back in May that was granted. But I will let Mr. Jacobs speak on the requirements and why they chose to move forward with that request to the gravel.
Excuse me, while you address that, add in, is anything going to be parked there, equipment, anything at all?
Yeah, I can address that. Now, I can't say that nothing would be parked there temporarily. What that section of the area is behind the building is kind of a laydown area, similar to a contractor's yard. And quite often, and I think in other projects, we've come with that same kind of a request driven by owners' desires, because it's easier to maintain when you're turning trucks and other things on it in gravel than it is to maintain in asphalt or concrete. The paved area behind the building, which is a drive apron, is the space where the trucks would park longer term. But I can't say that they wouldn't park a trailer on the gravel to temporarily leave it there while they're running around and doing other maintenance work and drop a trailer for a little while. So there could be something stored or parked there, but it is not a drive lane or a parking lot. So it's that laydown area, which would be consistent with other approvals that you've done in different instances of similar scenario.
Just to summarize, just clarification of my understanding then. So essentially, the gravel was requested or perhaps proposed because of the usage of the location.
And Mr. Jacobs can correct me if I'm incorrect, but the one meeting that I attended, I believe some discussion was the gravel being less intrusive to the neighboring residential of drainage as well, not the having the hard surface for a drainage purpose, but you can correct me if I'm
No, that was part of that equation, although from terms of water quality calculations, it's the same 0.2 runoff for gravel or that, but it does provide a better water quality measure for absorption than the asphalt does. But it's really driven by the type of traffic that's going to be over it with the turning of the tires and the larger equipment. It's easier to maintain and more economical to maintain. So it was interesting to have that request come from the township during those design discussions, because it's the same request we get from our private development side of things as well. So I think that's pretty common in a service area versus a parking or drive aisle.
Thank you.
Mr. Steiner?
And just a clarification, it's not a big deal, but so it wasn't actually a variance, it was a design variation. So
Correct.
it did not go to zoning appeals or anything for an actual variance. So this was a township board decision to come up with the variation. Mr. Jacobs, he came forward and provided us all the information that he and Ms. Rector were just talking about. And we did talk at some length on concrete versus stone and gravel. So one of the things with the concrete, obviously, a lot more expensive than doing gravel. The intent is that it will not have regular parking there. Now, not to say that we might need expansion down the road, and we could potentially put concrete or asphalt in. Asphalt will probably be the last scenario, just because, as Mr. Jacobs said, the turning of the trucks and things, you tear the heck out of asphalt. So we'd be better with concrete, but that's a probably 15, 20 years down the road, if absolutely necessary. Parking equipment, the building is going to be a fairly large building. We're going to park as much equipment as necessary and possible inside, especially to keep it out of the weather, the elements and things like that. And especially one of the things of anything that's motorized, trying to keep that inside, keep it warm during the winter months, so we don't have problems with starting and things like that. I can't say for certain, but I do believe that our maintenance department might do some minor equipment repairs inside the building as well. It's not like they're going to do major automotive work, things like that, because that is currently sent out for work. But not to say that, again, maybe who knows, 15, 20 years down the road, maybe somebody decided to hire a mechanic, put a lift in there, and do something on that lines with hiring a mechanic. Obviously, it costs more money, but with the growth and development, who knows? It may be warranted at that time. So that there is a lot of room for future use out of this building with the size and scope.
Mr. Weens?
Question. I did see some questions and debates about the gravel or not on the last township board meeting, and I don't know if it was asked. If the township opted to leave that grass or dirt, they'd still have the option of driving over it, but there wouldn't have been any variation or variance needed for that too, correct?
That would be correct, but the only problem is if you do that and it's wet, then you start to have issues with sinking and heavy equipment getting stuck over there potentially. So.
And I will also say, if they were intending to ever use it for any type of trailers or anything, as a township, our ordinance would not allow them to utilize the grassy area.
Thank you.
Mr. Andrews?
What was the purpose for extending the gravel that far to the east, or the west side of the site, rather? What's
Behind the existing garage?
Yeah.
So that's presently gravel.
It is back there, okay.
Yeah, and so we were just calling out all of the gravel area.
Okay. The main flow of traffic, I presume, would be
because some of these are pull-through slots, is that correct, in the garage?
Correct,
I assume
yes.
the main flow of traffic would be through the new drive on the south side of the site into the building?
From a maintenance standpoint, that could be, yes. Or with the sheriff's department, it's not going to be, other than maybe a special day of trash pickup or something along those lines where it might be conducive for the site to have an in and an out.
Right.
But it's really not a two-way lane, so it's really going to be limited in its use. And there is I believe the gate stayed in, a gate on the backside to kind of close that off so that it's not a free pass drive in and out. The main daily traffic is intended to be through the main drive around the east end of the building, looping in from the backside with the trucks facing out towards the school.
Mr. Steiner, I just have a quick question. Can you summarize how this was being funded?
So when this first came up, there was a lot of discussion of obviously how we're going to fund this large of a building and this, the scope with this building. At the time that the township received about $3.3 million in ARPA Act funds, there was further discussion of what we could potentially do, possibly using some ARPA funds for this building. It's upside down.
You have to stand on your head.
Because there's other stuff that's backwards. So the reason what we're doing here is it's going to be primarily funded out of the ARPA funds. There were numerous projects that were originally scheduled or thought to be planned out of ARPA funds. When this building came to proposal, the finance manager went over all the numbers with the ARPA funds, the projected cost of this building, and it was looked at as though we could take the majority of the funding from ARPA funds. There were other projects that were originally slated that were moved out of the ARPA fund, and those will either be in the capital improvement plan or they will be in the township overall general fund budget to have those. So again, the majority is coming out of our ARPA funds.
Okay. Mr. Lake.
Yeah, just background story piece. Not that I know that I feel it's as important to the decision making, but currently, if I'm not mistaken, Bedford Township rents a facility to hold maintenance, hold their vehicles, etc. We're paying like a lease fee or something to that effect.
That building has been around for many, many years, and it's a very low amount that's even paid on that building. The building itself has a lot of repairs needed. In fact, Mr. Jacob, he looked at that site to see if there was anything worth trying to do there. Obviously, that building is a lot smaller in Temperance. This is going to give us a lot more room and future growth. It just was not a feasible site to do that. So again, there was not a lot of expenditure coming out to lease that building, but with what it would cost to repair that building, bring it up to code, bring it up to standards, and again, it's not sizable enough for future use. So the determination came to put it here on this property.
Thank you. Somebody else have any? Mr. Weens?
Mr. Steiner, I've been in that building multiple times. It is tight. You put the Jake in there and the mowers. There's not enough room to do maintenance. I understand that. Relating to this site, do you feel, from your view, that the board said because the township owns this land, because there's going to be less cost to use this site versus other site, because this impacts the neighbors probably less than other sites, this is probably the best way to keep the cost lowest for the taxpayers? Was that a consideration?
Absolutely, that was consideration of, again, if we'd have taken the need of a building similar to this in scope and then to purchase the right kind of property, it would have definitely been much more costly, and it probably would have pushed it outside the envelope of what we were willing to spend between ARPA and general fund money. So again, that was definitely a cost-saving factor.
Thank you.
I think also the multiple uses, it's not strictly a maintenance facility. There are also voting documents and equipment that need to be close to campus here that are a big part of this because there's no storage within the facility. So having that close by under the eyes of the clerk and her office was a big part of that picture as well.
Yeah, thanks.
So it's a split use.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Jacob, because that is another major thing where our clerk has an area in this building that's going to be reserved strictly for the clerk's department. It has to be air conditioned, heated, etc. because of the documents and records, the voting machines that would have to be kept there. It'll be under full lock and key. It'll be under full security with cameras and everything of the like with security alarm systems. So again, those are the kind of things we couldn't have done at the other building on Temperance, even if there was room, just because we did not have those capabilities and it didn't make sense to invest those kind of dollars into an old facility like that.
Has the fire department stated any concern about the location or proximity of the training building?
No, the only concern that came out of the discussions when we had joint meetings with the fire chief and the rest of the township planning staff for that was, can I use the bathrooms and can I use a bay in the instance of the training day itself to have a staging area? That's still in discussions, I think, but there's a plan of other options that they may have to better use the existing garage without having to worry about access to different things within this building. But that's the only concern that there was raised, because there's not an anticipation that it would prohibit them from doing any of their activities in the back.
Okay.
So I think they've got that worked out, though.
Ms. Director?
Yes, and I just wanted to provide some clarification because there were comments and via the email correspondence from the Drain Commission and Mannequin Smith Group. Those comments that were provided to Mr. Jacobs' office will all have to be addressed, and per my department, they will not be able to receive a building permit to start construction on site, and only thing they could start doing is once they receive soil erosion from the Drain Commission, they can start moving dirt. But to get a building permit, they must address all comments from the site plan approval process first. I just wanted to make that clarification that they can't move forward in construction. And also that the fire department will review it for construction drawings as well, but I do not believe there were any comments in proximity from where the structure is going to be located and interfering with any of the training activity on site.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Mr. Steiner, do you have anything else? Would somebody like to make a motion? Anyone?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan for the new proposed Bedford Township maintenance building that will sit on the property with an address of 8106 Jackman Road, Temperance, Michigan 48182, which is also parcel 5802-027-036-05. The approval is pending on all of the conditions from the various entities that must be addressed if they have not been already, primarily the Mannequin Smith Group, the Bedford Township Fire Department approval, Monroe County Drain Commission, in regards to the soil and erosion and sedimentation control with the site plan and their comments and conditions based on the July 1st, 2024 email. There will be nothing required from the Monroe County Road Commission as there's no work being done on Jackman Road.
In planning.
That's my final note in there. And then I guess the last thing to say, once again, that this, even though it's in our notes, the Township Board has granted a variation from the development design standards for the use of gravel on site as highlighted in the yellow on the site plan in front of you.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Helm seconds. Any further discussion? Mr. Andrews, would you like to take the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Helm,
Yes.
Mr. Weens,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews is aye, and Mr. Mahoney.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Okay, moving on to item 8, public comment.
Gail Kane, 105.6 West Temperance. My purpose for coming. It is my understanding that the Planning Commission is in the process of writing or rewriting, redeveloping ordinances. And I know that sometimes you don't always have meetings, but the latest I had heard was working on the sign ordinance. Being a collaborator or coordinator and a liaison for the Monroe County Adopt a Road program here in Bedford Township, I am routinely, during the months of our pickup, requesting ordinance to do drive-bys along the roadsides. They won't do it unless there's a complaint, so I routinely file a complaint to have illegal signage removed. I don't like to do it, they don't like to do it, but it has to be done. And the concern that I have is we seem to have one individual in particular, no name's going to be mentioned, you all can figure it out very easily, who has the habit of advertising his business on all the intersections, all 4 corners. We've even had a design change in our signs. I don't know if he thinks he's going to be ignored or not noticed, but I think if you are rewriting your ordinances with regards to the sign one in particular, that you put into place in that ordinance fines. You know, there's no reason, it makes it a lot of work, but ordinance should be calling these people, informing them this is our rules, you can't put them on utility poles, et cetera, et cetera. The next time we have to remove your signs, there's a fine. And have it go up just like they do with the fire calls and everything else. Signage is dangerous. It's a distraction for people who are driving. It's a danger to the guys that have to, you know, crawl up and down the utility poles. So that's the only comment I want to make, because we're not usually a part of any of these new rules and stuff until after the fact. So it's just kind of a request, heads up. And those of us that volunteer our time to keep the roadsides clear in this township would really appreciate it. Thanks.
Just to respond, we did revamp the sign ordinances.
I'm too late.
Finished that up, about a year ago. And it was approved by the board, Township Board, and I believe signs are now under the purview of the BZA.
It's in the what now?
Under the purview of the BZA.
Okay, so I need to go to them and make my plea, or?
Ms. Director?
I think the concern is the temporary signs that are put out in the corner clearance and the road right-of-way. And the concern is that unless we get a complaint, we do not go out or the ordinance department does not just drive around and pick up the sign.
Yeah, it's those signs. It's
Complaint-based.
But unfortunately, we are complaint-based, and unless there is a complaint about where they're located, we try to let people know those are temporary signs. There is a process for those. However, they are not supposed to be in the old road right-of-way inside where the telephone poles, and they are not permitted on the telephone utility poles. I do know that some cases the ordinance department does have an opportunity to speak to those property owners that are putting them out. That is public property, is owned by somebody. You have to have their permission to do so.
But it's my concern with the habitual offenders where the guys pull the signs and then 2 weeks later they're back up again. And so it's just a constant battle. So maybe a fine to be put in place. So, and I know you guys make addendums and little adjustments to your ordinances. So maybe that could be a consideration to get something
I'll
done
just
like
say
that.
it's not an enviable position to be the ordinance officer in Bedford Township.
No, I won't be
Can't
there,
win.
but,
So, thank you.
yep.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to item 9, information. Ms. Rector,
I have nothing further.
no meetings coming up that you know of?
We're just waiting on some review letters, so possibly there could be a meeting at the end of the month, but on the 24th.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 10, commission staff comment. Mr. Weens, we'll start with you.
At the last board meeting, I saw that Ms. Keene and Mr. Frederick had some comments about their thoughts on the building and gravel and such like that. And I know it seems like there's a compromise with government buildings between what saves the taxpayers money versus what's fair to everybody. And I'm not envious being on the board to make those decisions at that level. But I took it in consideration. I appreciate their comments.
Mr. Steiner?
I'll go back to signage and just make a blanket statement for those that are running for public office. Please make sure your signs are behind the telephone poles. Anybody that you give a sign to that's going to take it to their own property, please remind them as well that it must be behind the telephone poles. It cannot be in the road right away. I have seen some signs that are encroaching into the road right away. So I think everybody knows that. It's in their packets when they pull their packet of petition information. So please just respect that. And again, tell your friends and whoever you give signs to please follow that ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Lake?
I have nothing for today.
I have nothing. Mr. Andrews?
Nothing from me.
Mr. Helm?
Nothing for me.
Ms. Ingram? I have nothing. Ms. Rector? I have nothing. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 11, adjournment. It is 7:35. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.